Hello, so I didn't actually think I'd be talking about Clan Collection again for quite a while, but they've already started revealing new cards and hinting their skills. And this one's pretty interesting. It's more sub-clan specific than the last wave, which is Witches now. So the first time around we've had Battle Sisters, then we've had sort of Tsukuyomi but playable in Susanoo, and now this time around we've got very Witch-based support. So I'm just going to go through like some of the hints we've got for each of the three different cards. So I presume the one on the left side that you can see there is a grade 1. The one in the middle looks like it might be a grade 2. And the one on the right hand side looks like it could be a grade 3. So to start with, we've got Citron Witch Mumu, which is basically a draw a card when rode upon by Witching It. So it's very similar to Circle Magus, but free. And obviously free because you're paying Witch. That's kind of the cost, I guess, playing the Witch deck. But very good. That's something that I think Oracle does need more of, because at the moment it feels like Tsukuyomi Engine kind of pushes its way into a lot of decks because it's just so good. So having another engine that can give you some free pluses besides Tsukuyomi could maybe try to help vary Oracle Think Tank lists a bit more than what we've had previously. So that's a pretty cool skill, I like that. Second, well, I say skill, but to be fair, the thing is, these reveals, these hints even, they do feel like they're almost telling us the skills. They're very direct compared to the last time round where I felt like I had to speculate a lot harder on it. But the second bit on Mumu says, also rest it to add witch cards from the top of your deck to your hand. So I don't know if that's going to be a Vanguard and Rearguard skill, or if it'll just be a Rearguard only skill. If it's a Vanguard skill as well, you could pretty much pull a Lake Maiden Lian or Dragon Monk Gojo from back in the original series, where you could just rest them as a Vanguard and then discard and draw. But that's kind of helpful if you ever want to try and stop someone from Hoaning you. Although now we've got the new heals, and there is that additional Angel card they've made as well, which can technically still deal damage to themselves. But technically you do have a damage deny against mandatory attack cards like Hoan, if that makes any sense. So that would be a possibility if they do make it a Vanguard skill. Otherwise it's probably just going to be a Rearguard skill, and it probably makes more sense I think if it's Rearguard only. I can't imagine it being Vanguard. It just doesn't seem like something that would kind of follow the formula of how they've been making cards for years now. That's useful because you could find stuff that you need, and it is adding to your hand as well, which can help with your riding later. In a way it's sort of almost like Tsukuyomi, because you're basically playing an engine that can help you find stuff that you need, which is what I think Oracle Think Tank probably should be focusing its support on, making some substitutes to Tsukuyomi Engine. Otherwise the whole clan is just going to turn to Tsukuyomi at this rate, Tsukuyomi without the grade 3. The grade 2, which is Jade Witch TT, when discarded from hand, if your Vanguard is a witch, call it, which is insane. There are quite a few things to go over there with that skill. Utilize it well by using it as a sentinel when guarding. Can be used to handle sentinel restrict attacks. So that's really interesting, because that kind of reminds you of cards like Eos Anis's Dragon, or maybe even like Skydive Eagle, or anything similar where you could try to perfect guard attacks using these sort of cards without actually being a sentinel. So you could probably get around cards like Hamiel, for example. But the first skill, when discarded from hand, your Vanguard's Witch, call it. That does have the possibility of being comboed with some cards that I'll go over in a bit. And then when you've got this next bit here, which says, which is around Benitwite Witch Yo-Yo, the grade 3. When read upon, either call it as a Rearguard or get to protect. This is kind of interesting. Then if your Vanguard is a witch, it can change into another witch and make additional attacks. So what it's implying there is that we're going to have a re-rider, sort of like, I think No-Seal. I think No-Seal does the same thing. I've hardly even played against that deck, so I could be a bit wrong. But this is quite interesting in that you could basically ride over and then call the yo-yo to Rearguard so you can get more attacks. But the other thing is as well, is there has to be a witch to ride over. And there's only really one target that I think is decent. So at face value it looks kind of broken for Oracle Think Tank to have something like this, but if you look at what witches actually have, they don't really have strong Vanguards. It's not like it's not like you're riding Pentagonal Magus or something, or Imperial Daughter. Like it's not going to be as good as that in terms of strength maybe. But one card that is good would be Wisteria Witch Zozo, which I'll get to in a sec. So Zozo, which is this card here. This is a Vanguard skill. When it attacks, reveal any number of imaginary gift protects from your hand, and 3 units in your front row get power +5 until end of turn for each card revealed. If 2 revealed, 3 units gain 10k. That's the brackets bit, but basically the fact that you can use this to gain power and give it to front row during your after your restand attack is pretty good. So you don't have to worry too much about damage triggers as much as before, because obviously multi-attack is good and all, but if what you end up calling are weak units that can get blocked by trigger, then sometimes it doesn't really feel that big a deal. So Zozo does seem to be the important card here to pick up. This card, Scarlet Witch Coco, I don't think is going to work that well from what's been hinted, so probably no point for the secondary market to start hype pricing this card, because I don't think Scarlet Witch, based on what they've told us here, I don't think it's going to work. Because if you look at the skill, it says when ridden from a grade 2, draw a card, but it's not going to be ridden from grade 2, it's going to be ridden from a grade 3. And then the second skill is an axe. I don't really need to say anything else about that, it's an axe, not a battle phase skill. So Coco doesn't look like it's going to be important in this deck. It's looking to be more for Zozo deck, based on what they've hinted there. Another thing to go into, with the reriding, you could reride grade 3, but suppose it's not actually based on grades. You could technically ride back down to grade 2 and then prevent your opponent from striding. That's one play you could do with that grade 3. So PP would be a good one, because she has a skill when rode upon, you can Soul Blossom and draw, so you can still get some additional value for it as well. So PP might be a good card to prepare. Another card to go through is Floor Witch Mimi. So she has a discard cost, you can discard a witch to deal damage to your opponent. That could work with the witch card mentioned earlier, but this is an on-place skill when placed on Vanguard, so you're not doing multiple attacks with that card, so it's not quite as interesting as the other players that we're going to go through. Another thing as well would be on attack cards. So besides witches, let's just say that this card doesn't require witch Vanguard, or maybe you just want to play in some other deck. You could use it with, say, Promised Daughter as an example, or something like Inside Magic Paparilla, which is a promo for Keta Sanctuary. And what they can do is they can discard during battle. So if you're doing that, then you can get extra attacks with those. This one's really good because you can discard 2 cards, so if you happen to have 2 of them, you can discard both and then call both while drawing 2 cards, which sounds like really good value. So this one will probably be the better one, whereas Promised Daughter you could really only do it with 1, because this is also going to be attacking as well on one of your 3 circles. Or 2 rearguard circles even. So you wouldn't really be able to get as many attacks as Paparilla, which works with the Vanguard. But then again, we do need to find out as well how drive checking will work for that new card, because maybe it'll have like a cost such as discarding cards, losing drive checks. Similar to Momo, which, speaking of Momo actually, Momo is also really good in that it does have the whole on attack discarding ability, so you could discard those grade 2s as well when you attack with this, and then what is it, discard up to 3 cards from your hand, and for each card discarded, 3 of your front row units gain 10k until end of turn. If you discarded 3 cards at the end of that battle, stand this unit and it gets drive -2. So you could technically call those cards over by discarding them. The only downside is that you will miss out on the power-ups, which is sort of a nerf in itself. So if you're willing to do that, you could do that. I mean, I'm not really sure if I would, but it's a line of play. Momo is a generic staple, and the option does exist if you play witches. Just know that you can't gain the 30k power with your newly called units, because Momo, after you discard the cards, Momo will then be allocating the power. So that's a judgment call you have to make, which I think is more the reason actually why the promo and the on attack discards might be good. There is another witch card that does have an on attack discard, which is that witch, I think it was Gigi or something. Hold on, let me just double check its name. Yeah, it's Gigi. But the thing with Gigi is that you have to be careful, because this card here says you have to discard a trigger unit from your hand. So that's not something you can actually use. In case people think about using this as a discard, you'd have to scrap that thought. So there does seem to be some contradictions with witches. Some stuff just doesn't work with other stuff. I guess that's how witches have always been, though. They've never really been very consistent towards a certain playstyle. Like even V-Series witches conflict a bit with the original, which are soulless witches, while the new ones aren't soulless. It's sort of like this. There's a lot of random witches. It's sort of like Genesis in the recent clan collection with Chamomile and Orange Witch. They don't really work too synergistically with the actual Genesis Witch subclan. So there will be some contradictions to look out for when you're playing these decks. Just because it has a witch in its name doesn't mean it's going to automatically flow optimally with every other witch. Because that doesn't seem to be the case in Oracle, but that doesn't seem to be the case either in Genesis. So just look out for that when you're going through things. But yeah, there are a handful of cards that may not work very well with each other, and you may have to do a bit of balancing out and judgment calls and so on. But Momo's a staple, as I mentioned earlier. Sterling Witch Momo, you still have the option of using it anyway, even if you miss out on the 30k power to your rearguard that you superior call. It's still there as an option, so you can technically get 6 attacks in one turn. You just have to give up on that power up if you're using it that way. Or you could just rely on other cards as this card instead if you wanted to do that. That's always an option as well. It does look like witches here are starting to kind of go off into their own track with their own type of aggression. This is kind of exciting for people in V Premium, because Oracle doesn't really have multi-attack in V Premium, or it doesn't even have much guard restrict either, especially compared to Premium where you've got Ichikishima on top. The guard restricts are a lot weaker in V Premium, so they're more of a grind beatdown deck than they are that really, an aggro deck. But I think with witches, it's sort of like we've got to kind of see how it plays out, because No Seal obviously wasn't like considered that aggressive for a multi-attack deck. Like they will try to nerf it somehow, because Oracle and Angel Feathers are just taboo, I think, to make aggressive stuff for. It's always felt that way. Something I do find interesting though is that the Grade 2 Sentinel, Pseudo Sentinel, could also encourage people to play Sentinel crits, so it's very good if you want to have like a maxed out crit lineup without missing out on using Sentinels. And so that might be a very good thing to think about, whether you want to play 4 Kusanagis in your trigger lineup. So all in all, it does seem like this deck will end up having consistency. It will end up having a bit of power. It will have a few different options as well. So this could actually end up being a solid deck when they reveal it. But of course, some cards may not be as good as people may think they are. So Coco doesn't really look that promising in this, the main boss of Witches. I don't think Scarlet Witch Coco will actually be an integral card based on how they described it. It is kind of strange though that they wouldn't make a card that works with Coco. Maybe they... I mean, it's a triple rare. It's not like it's a VR or anything, so the entry barrier will be quite low. They could still end up reprinting Coco, so I'm not sure why they wouldn't have tried to make it very good with Coco. It is a bit of a surprise, to be honest, but yeah, we'll see what we get as they announce more cards anyway. I'll see you around next time. Goodbye.